Yeah, hello. Thank you, Andrew, for the introduction. I'll start the day off. Yes, I grew up in a place called Central Otago, which is halfway between Dunedin and Queenstown. Grew up on a family farm. We had a family-run shearing business as well as hay-making operation. A little bit about Central Otago. It's a fairly extreme environment. We have weather we can get down to minus 28 in winter, up to 38 in summer. An environment like that helps us to mould the type of animal that we produce. It dictates to what we do. The photo up there is a sport called curling. It's done on the outdoor open. We have to have at least 8 inches thick of ice. That's what we call a bonspiel, which is called probably every 5-6 years when there's good enough ice. So that's the type of environment we grew up in. We usually bank on feeding, full maintenance feeding for 100 to 120 days. Basically we spend all summer making hay and all winter feeding it out. So we don't tend to feed hay and silage out to rubbish. You'll go broke. The type of stock that we produce have got to grow quickly, mature and go. Prime lambs have got to be basically born about the end of September. We can't go any earlier because of the environment, and we need our stock gone by Christmas. So over 4 months we've got to have lambs that grow very quickly, because we can also have hot dry summers. There's pressure on to get rid of surplus old ewes. So that's helped us to why we do what we do, the type of animals that we do produce. I had 10 years breeding stabiliser composite bulls. These stabilisers were developed at Clay Centre in Nebraska. They were developed by a couple of scientists. At Clay Centre they have nearly every breed of cattle in the world, where they collect all the data on these cattle. And they found that the hybrids were the most profitable, especially when it come to converting kilograms of calf weaned to per kilogram of cow exposed. And then they also come up with the high meat yield that hit the market specifications. The stabilisers revolved around half British, half European. There's a 4 to 6 breed rotation, zeroing in on maternal traits. Jim Leachman from the Leachman Cattle Company, he brought the marketing rights to the stabiliser, and he set about setting up a global seed stock operation, which we eventually become part of, and that's how we got to where we are. It was using this time spent at Leachman Cattle Sales and a trip to the Meat and Animal Research Centre in Nebraska that we could see potential in what we could do with the Merino. In 2001 we moved back to our parents' place, my wife's parents' place in Swan Hill, between Molomane and Barham, and set about revamping our Merino operation. The original home place is 2,500 acres of lasered and pivot irrigation. We have a 1,400 megalitre general security water allocation, and rice is grown on an opportunistic basis. About 75% of the people in the area have sold their water back to the government. Some have repurchased other cropping land and diversified. Probably there's only 2 or 3 of us that have still got sheep that haven't sold water. The other 2 of them are certainly considering it. We potentially view ourselves in a reasonably strong financial position, basically because of the way we've gone with our genetics. Instead of modernising our irrigation and selling parts of our water rights back to the government, we thought we've done enough with our irrigation and purchased the property at Hay a couple of years ago. We're happy just to sit on our irrigation, but we've got to make it pay. We view as sheep operation as a far less risk than trying to do irrigated cropping, and we'll drop the rice. The selection criteria for our sheep, we basically do the ewe lamb joining first as our number one selection criteria. Then we select for growth rate and wool third, and we staunchly keep it that way. All lambs average 35 kilo at weaning. We aim to wean at around about 100 days. The early puberty, we select for ewes that conceive at 7 months, and we aim for a 45 kilo body weight at a condition score of 3+. As soon as I mention any body weight, I use condition score at the same token. To aim for a 45 kilo lamb at a condition score of less than 3, you'll get a different result. We use condition score 3+. If you aim for a condition score of 3, half of the sheep potentially are under condition score 3. So you'll basically get a result that's less than what is ideal. We target 80% conception. That's out of the whole drop, so that we then basically, every ewe lamb that we keep is conceived at 7 months. Over the last 5 years we were doing 2 joinings, a 7-month joining and a 10-month joining. Our genetics are at a place now where we can get them all to join at 7 months. The lambing at 12 months of age ensures that the ewe lambs that are born out of those ewe lambs are able to be joined that following year. With the ones that conceive at 10 months, their ewe lamb progeny are unable to make the joining weights. So that's why we really push for the 7-month joining, and we've done a lot of work on that to get those ewe lamb progeny joined out of ewe lambs to come up to the weight. The second joining of all ewes and aged ewes, we aim for a 70 kilo at condition score 3+. When we achieve that condition score of over 3, we usually end up with around over 70% of ewes carrying multiples. We aim for the ewe to wean her own body weight in lambs. So we're aiming for a 70 kilo ewe to wean 2 35 kilo lambs, which equals 70 kilos of lambs. So a ewe is weaning her own 100% of her body weight. That's where our focus is now moving. 2014 scanning results, 167% over 3 properties. We marked 135% lambs. This is a figure that's a little bit disappointing. The industry average should be about 20% losses. If we achieve that, we're close to the 150% mark where we want to get to. Areas where we can improve this last year with a little bit of energy supplementation in the form of barley to multiple rearing ewes to ensure good colostrum supply. Talking to our scanning operator, Matthew Ipson, he was a Nuffield scholar last year, and one of the reasons that, and he'd done it on lamb survival, and part of his thesis was that from the day the ewe is conceived to about day 60, the first trimester, they come up with the umbilical cord and the placental development is set up in that first 60 days. So when that's achieved to its maximum potential, that lamb, that ewe, is able to then feed the multiple rearing ewes a lot better, which was another way of increasing a better survival of ewe lamb, twin lambing ewes. It's something that I thought was really quite relevant. With the heifer joining and the heifer mating and lambing down of heifers as 2-year-olds, joining them at 1-year-old, one of the issues that we'd dealt with vets was that it actually works the opposite way. When you're joining heifers and you've got them on extremely good feed, the same thing can happen. That placenta can grow to its very maximum with a large umbilical cord, and it has the negative effect for the fact that it can cause large calves born just before calving. So it's an area I think we can target to have a better lamb survival of our twin rearing ewes. All our rams are bred out of ewes that conceive at 7 months. We breed all our own rams. Yes, our ewes cut 10% of their body weight of unskirted fleece wool, so we aim for a 70 kilo ewe that can cut 7 kilos. We're moved into a 6-monthly shearing program. In the past we were shearing our weaners every 6 months and our maidens every 6 months. Our older ewes we had to do it 8 months. They weren't quite meeting the staple length, but as the genetics are flowing through, we're now in a position we'll be shearing everything every 6 months, which makes the whole job a little bit easier. The current clip, they're doing 3.5 kilos every 6 months at 65 mil. The young maidens are around 3.9 and the older ewes are just over 3. Targeting 4 kilos at 70 mil by 220 and 4.5 at 75 by 225. Yeah. And the lamb's wool is around 17 microns, weaners 18.5 and ewes 19 to 20. We're looking at supplying the Merino company with unmilled wool. There's a micron premiums of around about 50 to 100 cents premium, which is something where we're able to move to. Their ideal length is 75 mil, where they want us, with a range of 68 mil to about 110 mil. So to do the 6 month shearing and achieve this target is why we have to keep pushing a little bit of selection pressure to get to over 70 mil, ideally 75 mil. So we're not too far away. But, yeah. And skin testing for density and length, we use Jim Watts as an advisor. So he comes in and does skin testing on our rams. Most of our current sires have come up with a primary to secondary ratio of 80 to 95. What that figure means is for every primary fibre there's 80 to 95 secondary fibres. So that's why with the SRS system they tend to have that really shaggy coat. It's those longer primary fibres that stick out. And the target, he says, would quite soon would be up around 120 to 140, so we'll actually keep increasing our fleece weights. So it's all quite achievable, even though we select for wool as our third option. Yeah, so we're quite happy with that. When we do our joining, a lot of people do the wool over frame. We tend to avoid the frame word and use carcass because we're more meat orientated. We're very cautious about using high frame score type rams that are long in the leg, long in the body for yield reasons. A lot of people talking dual purpose. To me, that even though you've come from a heavy cutting, heavy skin type animal and you think you've planed the body up, that you're now dual purpose, I think there's a bit of room for improvement to go into a high yielding type carcass, yeah, basically through moderating your frame score. Yeah, the composites, the bottom graph is some data we've got from Clay Centre at Nebraska where they formulated the stabiliser breed. Yeah, composites is about understanding antagonistic traits and keeping them in balanced. When you push certain traits, you've got to be ready to watch out where you're going to be weak or where you're going to need to draw attention to. When you push growth rate in cattle, the first thing it'll shoot up will be your birth weight. Through selection pressure and performance recording, you can monitor that, and there are such things as quite low birth weight, high growth rate cattle. What happens then is usually instead of your great big high frame score type cattle that have massive growth and big birth weights, you can get a moderate framed, quite stout type of animal that'll have the same growth rates but with a lower birth. Marbling is another one. When you chase marbling, they tend to have very low eye muscle. Once again, through performance recording, you can select those ones with a moderate to high muscle and marbling. Density and length in wool, you push length, staple length, it's quite hard to hold density. And comfort factor and constitution. As soon as you get your wools really nice and sweet on sheep, usually the first thing that goes is the constitution. They tend to be quite a slabby type of animal. So with us, when we're doing our meat thing, we tend to just come back a little and be very wary of the really pearly high comfort factor type wools. We're certainly making, there are sheep there that can do it and do both trades, and they're the ones we try and go for. Yeah. By taking the composite approach, you can select for multiple traits at once by selecting breeds or other bloodlines to do different traits. Yeah, what I mean by that, when we did the bred well and fed well course, we had a form to fill out. It was an exercise where they showed people that to make progress, you really only need to select for 1 or 2 traits at a time, or you won't make the progress. With composite breeding, I might just walk over here. Does this microphone still work? Yeah. If you look over here, the stabiliser composite was made up of the Galvey and the Simmental, as well as the Hereford and Angus. So what you're getting here is great milk production, and what you're getting from the British cattle is the high marbling content. And so they're quite a maternal cross, whereas you'd avoid using the Charolais, the Chianina and the Limousine. They wouldn't give your whole operation any milking ability, and they're not maternal. They would suit a terminal type operation. And the same when we're in those breeds there, when you're selecting to carve down as join them as yearlings and carve down as 2-year-olds, this age at puberty really shows, and it really shows the difference within the cattle breed of the age of puberty. So when we were zeroing in on doing the ewe-lamb joining, we used this type of data in what we were trying to achieve. Our flock that we inherited was 10 years on Wonga bloodlines, another 10 years on Chiringa, which goes back to Banavie, big heavy wool cutting type ewes. So we knew we had fibre density and wool cutting ability covered. So what we wanted to do, we introduced the Kerry SRS Merinos, and that gave us milk production and a bit more eye muscle. So we created them and used them as an F1. So we were chasing milk production, survivability and hardiness, and we put them over our heavy cutting type sheep. So we got the milk, but thrown in for free was the staple length from the SRS sheep. So we sort of had all 4 factors covered. Then we used the Australian meat merino, which is a bit similar. And it has the bit of Findorp or White Suffolk in the background of its genetics, and that gave us the early age at puberty. And once again, over our heavy cutting type animals, we created another F1, and we then folded them together. So that's the basis of where we started. We used another breed called the Afrino, which has got more early puberty over a guy who was using Chiringa rams. Bought some F1 rams of those and created another 3rd cross and folded them in. And then after that, we were finished with any other outside influence and used ASBVs and used some Leakum rams and just selected solely on ASBV data and assuring that the animals all look the same phenotype is what we'd done to create it, and now we just breed within our own rams. Composites, there's 2 types of composites, an open composite and a closed composite. Santa Gertrudis, Coopworths, what you would term as a closed composite. The crosses have been formed and they're shut off. An open composite is where you keep introducing new F1s to chase the hybrid vigour. Just touching on the phenotype, frame score and growth pattern. This graph here is from StockScan, which is based in New Zealand, and they operate right throughout Australia. The guy doing the scanning of our ewes, rams, we got this bit of information from him, and that illustrates that each of these 3 lambs, 16.3 kilos, Y-grade lambs with variations in conformation within the same draft and breed. If you see the lamb on the left, you notice how it's the lowest yielding carcass, and the lamb on the right is the highest yielding carcass, and there's a 24% difference in yield. That's why we shy away from a great big tall, long-legged, long-bodied animal to go the next step and have a high-yielding type carcass on a merino. That's the type we go for. Very wide loins, filled in down through the twist, slightly nuggetier, very wide across the back of the neck. and a bit of shoulder doesn't frighten us. From all the data at Play Centre, when we were there, with calving ease, because we were doing the yearling joining and calving down at 2-year-old, 80% of calving difficulty is weight, 10% was shape, and the other 10% was gestation. Gestation being how long, if it's born earlier or later. Some cows are slower to calve, take longer. So yeah, we quite like a nugget ear type. The top left-hand ram lambs are 7 months old, and the bottom ones are ewes that had lambed as ewe lambs. Curve benders, this is a term Jim Leachman used in describing his type of cattle. So what it is, it's basically like a Vela type cattle, nugget ear type rather than the high frame score. This 35 kilos here, that's our optimum weaning weight. When we achieve that, that gives us an option then for our male lambs to be gone as weather lambs. That's a sort of a key target to go straight into a feedlot. When the blue line is where we used to be with our bigger type of animal, weaning about 25 kilos. They were too small, too young to go straight to a feedlot if we ran out of feed. So you'd have to background them, and you're out of feed, you're feeding grain. It affects the cost. So to have the genetics to wean at 35 kilos puts us in a good spot. So then from 100 days up to 200 days, we've just got to get them up to 45 kilos. So our whole operation revolves around hitting that 45 kilo at 3 score plus at 200 days. Management, when you select for fertility or using a composite type operation, you've got to up your management. So scanning to identify twin rearing ewes is a must. Basically our whole year starts at weaning. At weaning, it's imperative that you get those ewes that have reared multiple lambs back up to weight. The worst thing you can do is think they'll be right, chuck them back in the mob. They're your best ewes. If you can get them back up to weight, they'll do it again. Got a couple of friends who do a lot of scanning in Scotland, all around the world, Australia here. The data they can give us is ewes that scan as multiples are 75% likely to twin again. All our twin scanning ewes are earmarked, as well as the progeny out of them. All the ewe lambs are up to joining weight 7 months. The last 2 years we've done a few trials with using Regulin. Regulin's an implant that regulates the melatonin levels in the rams. It helps to fool them to emulate an autumn joining for a spring lambing. So if we're trying to lamb in the autumn, that's when it comes into its own. It also helps the semen quality, and for us, because the semen quality is a lot better, it reduces the number of empties at scanning. It was always quite frustrating. We'd have high lambing percentages, lambing in the autumn, but we're always up in the tune of 8-9% empties. As soon as we use the Regulin, we drop down to more of an industry average of 4 to 5% empties. And what it is, the semen was a far higher quality. It wasn't damaged. And they think it's put down to the ewe going into lamb, and it slips. Something's not quite right. And those ewes are good ewes, but they're not coming. They're ending up going out as dry, so they're not getting back into lamb. The other good thing about the use of Regulins enabled us to tighten up our joining period. A couple more. Getting the elements right. That's it, okay. Yep. Soil, fertility, pasture. It's like what Sandy's just talked about. Genetics, getting our management right with the high fertility type sheep. Understanding your feed supply curve. Once again, exactly what Sandy talked about. The big thing, and I agree entirely, when you've got high performing, high multiples, go later. They have that ability to milk well, high growth rates, they'll catch it up. It's a thing you take from the dairy industry. The dairy guys really work on getting the milk production up quick. The higher and quicker they can get it up, and it's the linear, they'll milk far longer. You stunt them and they'll only reach a certain level. You'll find they won't milk anywhere near as long. And decide if you're a wool producer or a grass grower. You need to put as much emphasis on growing grass. That's what the dairy guys do. and they do it very well. Take-home messages: low-cost producers will always survive. Bringing in replacement heifers or ewe lambs is one of your biggest hidden costs of production. Our solution is feed them and breed them. At the Bred Well, Fed Well conference, they were stated, there was a figure put up that 60% of what we're doing here, 60% of that feed would have to be fed anyway, just as maintenance. We focus on kilograms of lamb weaned per kilogram of ewe exposed. We link our ewe wool cut to ewe body weight is the best way to maintain a high fertility. Linking ewe body weight to lamb weaning weight keeps a lid on mature ewe body weight, aiming for a 70 kilo ewe to wean 2 35 kilo lambs. Tradition, emotion and evolution. Tradition, we need to look back, learn what our fathers and everyone else has taught us. Emotion, when we need to make changes, one of the big things you need to do is just remove the emotion from any situation. And evolution, keep adapting. And a catchphrase from Jim Leachman: it's all about guts, nuts and butts. And that's the troops. Thank you.